Hello and welcome. Those of you who frequent my YouTube channel are used to me talking about lightsabers and lightsaber-related products. Today I wanted to switch things up a little bit and talk about something that's probably going to be interesting to people within the costuming world, which is related to the lightsaber community. So I wanted to talk about Jedi belts today. Now, if you're looking for a Jedi or a Sith costume, this is going to be one of those accessories that's definitely necessary, but sometimes a little bit tricky to come by. Just as a quick demonstration here, if you were to buy a cosplay Jedi outfit online, you would very likely get something like this with it. Now, this is a pleather belt, Velcro attachment, very cheap fake buckle up the front, snaps over here for the center belt, but the center belt doesn't go all the way around. Now, this is not going to pass muster in any sort of costuming group, but it's good enough for a Halloween costume. They are sort of flimsy and they do fall apart, and they're not made of very good materials. The other end of the spectrum, if you go out on Etsy and you start talking to leather workers and costumers, you might find yourself easily paying a couple $100 for a Jedi belt that looks something closer to this or this. This one was an Etsy item here. Right, but the basic design of a Jedi belt is not that complicated. It's fairly easy to put together on your own. It takes about $30 worth of materials. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the design and show you guys what goes into a Jedi belt. All right, this one that I've got right here, you may notice very similar design. We have a thick outer belt and we have a thinner inner belt. And we have some kind of attachment that hooks the inner belt together. Now, this one also would not pass muster with a lot of costuming companies because it has a front closure that is a normal buckle. The inner belt overlaps and is secured by the outer belt by way of this buckle right here. The other problem with this is it's got sort of belt loops sewn onto it. Okay, so this is not a traditional Jedi belt, but it's very similar. A more traditional Jedi belt is going to look like this. Now, this is a very small one that I made for my son. You'll notice it's got Chicago screws right here, which are these sort of screws with the studs. Usually it has 8 of them in 4 sets, sort of equidistant spaced around the belt. It has an inner belt with a front buckle. Okay, this is a magnetic buckle. This inner belt is actually just a child's belt that I purchased. And it's got that thicker leather with sort of a fold in the back where the leather overlaps to secure it so it doesn't wiggle around with you, and it also sort of hides that edge in the back and makes it look more like a pouch. Now, this is one of my own design. Like I said, I made this for my son out of leftover parts for the one that I made for my wife. Okay, so front buckle, the larger leather just sort of overlaps, secured by this loop. The inner belt wraps around it, sort of held in place by these Chicago screws, buckle in the front. Right, another option that you have with Jedi belts, this is the one that goes with my Darth Nihilus outfit. Okay, the Darth Nihilus belt doesn't have a front buckle, so it has a back attachment. Same basic design. We have a larger leather outer belt, a smaller leather inner belt, those 4 sets of Chicago screws. You'll notice the inner belt sort of flops around. It's held in place right there with a rivet. But this thing, you just wrap the inner belt around you, secure it with the outer belt, rotate it to the back, and there's a little black cover right here that you put over the buckle so that the buckle is not visible. So the front of this belt just looks like that. All right, the other way to do it, the other sort of design that you might find is a fake front closure. This belt that I've got right here is my wife's belt, and this is the same design as my Darth Nihilus. Okay, it's got the 4 sets of Chicago screws. There's the cover to hide the buckle. It's got a buckle in the back. It's got an inner belt, and it's got a false front buckle sewn on. This one has a couple accents as well. So that's another way that you can do it. I'm going to put together one at the end of this video that actually uses both. It's going to have the back closure and it's going to have the fake front buckle, but the fake front buckle is going to be made out of a real buckle in case I wanted to put it there. Let me just go over the raw materials that you're going to need for a Jedi belt. Outer belt. Now this is a plain piece of leather. I dyed this one myself with red leather dye and black shoe polish actually over it to give it that sort of burgundy or maroon look to it. Sanded the edges of it using a leather finishing tool, and it's just got some holes punched in it. Basically I took my belt dimension, which for me is about 38 inches, divided that by 4, and spaced these things evenly so that they would be the same distance apart when it's wrapped around my waist. Alright, so you'll see I marked it from the center. Okay, basically I folded the thing in half, found the center, decided that it's going to be 9-inch segments for a 36-inch waist, 4 9-inch segments. Marked 4.5 each direction from the center, 9 inches from there, marked it, went to the other side, measured the width of my inner belt, punched 4 sets of holes along this thing. All right, now you're going to need to give give it a little bit of wiggle room for the inner belt. You don't want it exactly the width. You got to go about 1/8 of an inch to either direction of that because the screws are going to be a little bit thick, and if you put it exact, the inner belt's not going to fit. The only other thing that you need with an inner belt is one more hole punch right here, just to secure this belt to that belt so it doesn't flop around like you saw with that black one and keep coming off. It makes it harder to put on. Alright, so outer belt, holes pre-punched, inner belt. Now the options that you have for this outer belt is 2 1/4 inches wide. You can go up to 3 if you want. If you get too much above that, I mean you can certainly go crazy if you want, but I wouldn't go too much above 3. This inner one here is about a 1 inch probably, about the same length, dyed it the same. You can also have it differently like you saw with my son's, the red and the black. The holes that you need in this one, if you're going for a back closure, you're going to need to cut a hole for a buckle to go through. All right, it's wider than you think. 2 holes for a rivet, a slit for the buckle, so that when you put the buckle through, you can close it like that. Put a rivet right there and it's secure. 1 more hole down here, which matches up with this hole right here, which is where we're going to attach it to the main belt. All right, if you're going for a back closure, that's what you do. If you're going for a front closure, this needs to be exact. There's no wiggle room. You make it to the adjustment of the belt, or to the adjustment of your belt size. You would cut it in half, install a buckle right here, and for a lot of them, you fold the leather over and put a strap around it, so it's slightly adjustable, but not much. I like the ability to have the play, depending on how thick my costume is, so I like the back closure. All right, so we have the outer belt, the inner belt, a buckle that I just showed you. All right, Chicago screws. Now let me give you a close-up of what a Chicago screw looks like real quick here. You can get flat-headed screws, you can get round-headed screws, doesn't really matter, but the basic operation here, those holes that I punched, the screw part goes through that hole, and the stud part screws on top. Okay, pretty simple. All right, the other things that you need, plain rivets. All right. Find a base here. Here we go. So rivets have the shorter base part, the longer part that inserts, and basically you just put these things through the leather, stick them together, and smack them with a hammer, and they will fix into place. Okay, the rivets are what I'm going to use to seal this part right here around the buckle, and also to attach the belt, or to attach the center belt to the outside belt. Also, they're what I'm going to use to close the little thing that's going to be used to hide the buckle in the back. All right. We also need another piece of leather to hide the little buckle in the back. If you're going for a front buckle or a fake front buckle, you need that buckle. Now this one is just like the one on my son's. It's a magnetic buckle. It was taken from a child's belt. I intend to not use this as a closure, but to use it as a fake. It is 2 pieces. They hook together. I could use it as a closure. Since I'm using it as a fake, I've got another piece of the leather belt, of the center leather belt, cut to fit right here. Just going to pop that in there so that it's flush. And I'm just going to affix this to my center belt where I want it. If you're going to put in any other studs or anything like that, you need those. Studs, buttons even. You saw on my wife's it had sort of the buttons. That would work. The only real tools that you need for this, you need an X-Acto knife or a box cutter. You need something to hammer onto. It can be a cinder block, it can be an anvil, it can be a piece of wood. You need a hammer for closing the rivets and for punching the holes. You could use a leather punch, which is what I did, or you could just use a nail in order to get those holes there in the first place. All right, so let's put it all together, shall we?